Welcome to Reparenting Daily, your free daily guide for inner child healing and repairing the relationship with yourself. This podcast helps you establish a consistent reparenting routine and is divided into 3 sections. The first is the daily reading, the second is a discussion of the reading, followed by suggested journal prompts, and the last section is peaceful binaural beats meditation for closing. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whenever and wherever you're joining us. I'm so glad that you could join us on this journey of self-expansion. If this is your first time here, welcome. As a celebration of passing episode 700, I've opened a free membership tier for the Patreon community so you can access additional resources and join the weekly Zoom calls for free. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now and that so many people are really struggling. My hope here is to still encourage others to continue the work on reparenting and to offer a free community where people can come together and do that. I'd also like to thank all of you who've been along on the journey so far. Just as a reminder, this is a free podcast, but you can support the project by purchasing the Reparenting Daily Journal, where you can follow us along all year. This 333-page journal gives you extra insight and resources for each week, and also provides space for you to keep your notes. Another way to support the podcast is to purchase the Fairy Tales for Reparenting series, volumes 1 through 3. This collection organizes famous and obscure fairy tales from around the world into the 3 phases of the hero's journey. While you might think that fairy tales are for kids, I'd like to challenge you. These stories contain profound truths and lessons carried down over millennia that we can use in our reparenting journey. It's a fun way to reconnect with your inner child. Each volume comprises 10 fairy tales. They include an analysis section to help you dive deeper into the message, as well as journal prompts and space to reflect on the story's meaning in your life. Lastly, you can also support the project by taking a paid Patreon subscription, by purchasing the books on the website, or by donating via Buy Me a Coffee. You can find all this information on the Support Us section of the website. So now, with these announcements out of the way, let's dive into today's practice. Today, we're going to be listening to a portion of a lecture entitled Good Boundaries Free You. It's actually a TED Talk by Sarri Gilman. It's a quite popular one. It has almost 2 million views, so definitely go ahead and check it out in its entirety. We'll only listen to a portion, but as always, you can find the link in the show notes. Just as a reminder, we're in July, and the theme for this month is establishing boundaries and assertiveness. We're in week 1, which is July 1st to the 7th, and the theme of this week is understanding the importance of boundaries. Now, because I've moved to a weekly format as opposed to daily, this week we don't start a new theme, but in fact have a double of the first week's theme, which is also a good reminder, but we will, in the rest of the month, have time to go through the remainder of those 4 weeks. And so I've selected this lecture because the first one that we listened to last Monday was by Evie Pomporis. And in that short talk, she emphasized really how you know when to set boundaries and the importance of that, right? In this lecture that we're listening to, she's talking about how we're actually fed by that. She goes into understanding more of the energetic dynamics. That includes the guilt and negative emotions that might accompany something positive, such as setting boundaries, which is an expression of self-love and self-care. She also touches on those topics today, which are important as we are halfway through the year, to perhaps take a recap in terms of our self-care and how much we're keeping up with the themes of the earlier parts of this year, to ensure that we're being consistent. Although we're focusing on this month, July, on boundaries and assertiveness, it's good to remember, for example, last month's theme of self-love, because that really is the foundation of why we have boundaries in the first place. They're how we define our self-respect, self-esteem, and self-love. Boundaries are not to keep the world out. They're to protect ourselves and only allow what is necessary and good to come in. She discusses how boundaries can oftentimes cause pain or difficulty for those who aren't accustomed to using them. And if you're on your path of learning to implement and use boundaries and understand them for the first time, it can be a little bit of a bumpy ride, particularly depending on the type of childhood experiences that you've had surrounding boundaries. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to Sarri Gilman.
Everyone is in the middle of a life story. And your story is being shaped by what you are saying yes to and what you are saying no to. Your yeses and nos are what boundaries are made of. So what are boundaries? How do we build them? How do we heal when our boundaries are violated? And how do we push through boundaries? These questions have been the center of my life and my work. When I was a little kid and my world was just my family, I was pretty sure we were the only ones struggling with those questions. And then I grew up and I became a family therapist. And I saw lots of people struggling with these questions. And when I took a detour and ran nonprofits, I saw communities and leaders struggling with these questions. So now I teach workshops and wrote a book to help people answer these questions. And as people answer these questions and learn more about their boundaries, I've watched hundreds of people make the journey from being overwhelmed and exhausted and stressed out to people who trust themselves and are decisive and are committed to healthy relationships. I'm going to share some stories and some tools that you can use to strengthen your boundaries. Let's begin with the most essential boundary tool that everyone has. Take a moment and visualize a compass in your hand. It looks just like this. It has 2 words on it, yes and no, and only those 2 words. You use this compass to make your decisions, figure out your relationships, and set your boundaries for your whole life. Today I'm going to talk about how you can use this compass to place boundaries where you need them the most, lower your stress, and figure out your life's purpose. Now, the key to placing boundaries where you need them the most is tolerating stormy emotions. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather had one way of doing things, his way. And when I was 24, he came to me and he asked me to be the executor of his will. And I asked him, what was it he wanted me to do after he died? And when he told me, I got all this stress inside, because there were things I didn't want to do to other family members on his behalf. And I really wanted to please him, but I couldn't say yes to all this stuff. So I told him, no, I couldn't be his executor. And he did what most people do when you tell them no. He got angry. You know, when you listen to your own yes and no, other people are going to get angry or they may get disappointed. Boundary setting will unleash emotions. And yes and no are not feelings. So I couldn't let my fear of my grandfather's anger, nor my desire to please him, determine my boundaries. Now, sometimes your compass is clouded over. And you can't see if something is a yes or a no for you. And this happens if you've been ignoring your compass or arguing with it because you don't like what it's saying. Years ago, I wanted to be a writer. And I was very busy working, and I couldn't figure out how writers made time to write and earn a living. So I took this yes, and I shoved it to the side. Those are the writers that are here. And my daughters and I were attending this writing camp, week-long thing for middle schoolers, and I got to go as a chaperone. And one night, this real writer got on the stage, and he told us how he made time to write, what he said yes to with his time, and what he said no to in order to complete his books. He lived very cheaply, and his sole job was writing. There was my answer. So for 2 years, I saved my money, I lowered my expenses, and then when the time came when I had my money saved up, I devoted myself to writing. All that work, and in like just a few short months, my yes became a no. Writing is a solo sport. You sit alone all day. There I was, talking to my dog. Oh, this is not the move for me. I'm a people person. So I listened to my no, I went back to working with people, and I saved some of my time for writing. That was a much better fit. Now, if you pay attention to this compass, it just gives you the basic guidance, the yes and the no. It doesn't give you any details. You have to figure out the details. But the thing is, you can trust this compass because it's only trying to do one thing, and that's take care of you. And if you allow your compass and your boundaries to take care of you, it'll mitigate stress. And stress is a very serious issue. According to the American Psychological Association, 50 to 58% of us, I'm not going to say who, are suffering from high stress. That's kind of a shocking number. And employers who are listening may want to pay attention to this and think about how important is decision-making on the job? Because this compass is highly sensitive to stress, and stress clouds over your compass. I teach people boundary skills so that they can reduce and prevent their stress from accumulating. The challenging thing, though, is that setting boundaries is just a little stressful, right? It's brief stress, though. Like, once you get over that brief stress of actually doing it, you feel all this relief. And I call that brief stress sweating. You're going to do a little sweating when you set your boundaries. I sweat, and I teach this stuff. So let's go back to this compass in your hand. It is only trying to take care of you. And ask yourself this question. Are there ways that you could improve your self-care?
Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you've enjoyed this TED Talk. Again, don't forget to listen to the remainder of it because there's still about over half left. So it's really a good, amazing lecture, which helps us understand the concerns we might have if we're on this journey of learning about boundaries for the first time, where the consequences are a bit higher. So we might feel more pressure. But it's essential to remind ourselves that we deserve that. That is the foundation of our self-respect. If we fail to have boundaries, we're setting a very poor example for how we allow others to treat us. And their treatment of us will indeed impact our own self-perception and mood and emotions. And so it's so important to take ownership of this part of your life. If you haven't used boundaries before or haven't been accustomed to enforcing them, once you get into the swing of it, you will notice your energy and health shift drastically. In fact, as I've been doing more research, I looked into the emotional consequences of certain diseases. And, for example, many women end up with autoimmune diseases because of their inability to say no, their inability to set boundaries. That repeated infraction is an extraction of emotional energy. When you fail to react in your own best interest, your body begins to attack itself, which is the definition of an autoimmune disease, because you are always at war emotionally with yourself, because you are refusing to allow what you need. And so in that sense, it's truly an emotional and energetic extraction that eventually over time leads to the self being programmed to understand that itself is against itself. And so your immune system begins to fight itself. So it's so important. It's not just boundaries, to have a good relationship. It's literally also for your physical health, in a literal medical sense, in an energetic sense, in a spiritual sense. It's the preservation and the protection of your soul. And that's why it's so important that we overcome the hurdles or challenges that one might face when learning to implement boundaries for the first time. It comes with plenty of trial and error. It is something that normally we learn in family situations. Today, I'm recording this on Sunday the 5th, and we had hexagram 9 from the I Ching. Let me just pull this book up. Yeah, so it was hexagram 9 from the sorry, I got that wrong. It was 3. Yeah. Hexagram 3, difficulty at the beginning. You can look on YouTube and you can find the live where I read them. In case you're new here, I also do many live recordings on YouTube where I do different readings. And I also am continuing the Fairy Tales for Reparenting series where I do videos every Saturday. Just a FYI, I think I forgot to make a notification here, but you can follow me on YouTube for much more content. I'm just relying on YouTube for now. I've kind of gotten rid of the other social media platforms just for simplicity's sake, and it's a lot of headache, and I don't really like being on the social media platforms. So if you check out the YouTube, you'll see all of the content, the reminders, the uplifting quotes and things that I'm doing there to build a community there for more engagement. So just as a side note, you can find the reading that I did today, so I'm not going to read the entire thing again, but it reminds us in this hexagram that I'll read just the beginning. Chun, difficulty at the beginning is the title. If we persevere, a great success is at hand. The literal translation of Chun is a blade of grass pushing against an obstacle as it sprouts out of the earth. Receiving this hexagram is a sign that beyond the difficulties and pressures that surround you, a success lies waiting. It reminds us here to seek the help of the sage, to engage with others, to learn from others. Because boundaries are things that, of course, we have to, as adults, learn to establish them. But we must not forget the resources of other people and relationships that are around us. Perhaps if you're learning boundaries for the first time, you might not be surrounded by the best relationships, or perhaps you've gotten lucky. But we should never forget that we have the chance to reach out and connect with others, to also understand boundaries better, to work on them, to brainstorm, mastermind with them. Connection is how you learn via social learning. We never stop the process of social learning, which is the psychological term for how we learn from each other by observing, copying, imitating. This is a process that never ends. It starts in childhood also, as you're a baby, toddler, watching your parents, beginning to mimic them walking, or how they hold a spoon or a pen, for example. But it's something that also applies to much more complicated matters, such as learning to relate to one another, or establishing boundaries, or looking for a job, or cooking. All skills that we can learn from connection with each other. But in order for connection to be successful, we must have and enforce boundaries. They're how we determine and interact with the world. And we're setting an example for others of how to interact with us by how we enforce our boundaries. And so I hope you check out the last part of this lecture. Again, it's excellent talk, almost 2 million views, so it's quite good. And I've been practicing my speaking with this podcast and trying not to say because someone made a comment in the section that she hasn't said any ums in that whole presentation. I did let one slip. I don't know if you heard it. Perhaps go back and listen and see if you can catch the one besides this one, because I'm saying it intentionally, and the other one. But yeah, I'm rambling now. So as we reflect on this lecture, number 1, how do you feel about your current ability to set boundaries in your life? Are you able to hold them up well and defend them? Number 2, where do you notice yourself having the most difficulty with boundaries? Is it related to a certain person or type of person, for example, your family or friends, coworkers, or members of the opposite sex? Or is it something related around a certain field in your life, such as your job or your hobbies or any groups that you might be a part of? Or is it something else entirely? Is there a theme to where you have difficulty setting boundaries? And number 3, what value do you most want to gain by establishing and holding stronger to your boundaries? What do you expect to be the benefit for you to realize? That's important to clarify, because that is your criteria for success. What do you actually want to get out of the boundaries that you're setting? Better relationships, more energy, a calmer mind. Prioritize what's most important for you, and then try to work backwards to reverse engineer the process of how to arrive there. So that's it for today. As always, thanks for being here. Take care of yourself, and please do be well. Welcome back. Now, this is the third and final section of the daily podcast. This is your silent meditation. Please find a place where you can be comfortable and undisturbed, where you can relax and spend some time with yourself for the next 10 minutes. You can choose to be sitting, standing, lying down, or in whatever position makes you most comfortable today. Just take some time to listen to yourself. Next, be sure that you're taking time to be with your breath and to connect more fully with your body. Don't be disturbed or overwhelmed by your thoughts. Simply allow them to pass. Just observe them. Do not engage with your thoughts. Only be mindful of them passing, as if they are leaves drifting down top of a river. Use this time to connect with yourself, whatever time of day you are listening to this. Namaste.